All the next day she did not say one word to me about gambling. In fact, she avoided having any word with me. The manner in which she treats me has not changed. The same absolute nonchalant, unmeeting me, and even something contemptuous and hostile in her mien. She doesn't bother to hide her aversion to me at all, this I can see, but she also does not conceal from me either the fact that she needs me for some purpose and that she is saving me for some future use. Kind of strange relationship has developed between us, which in many ways I cannot fathom, considering her pride and haughtiness with everyone. She knows, for instance, that I am madly in love with her, actually allows me to speak of my passion. Surely there couldn't be a better way to show her contempt for me than to permit me to speak to her of my love so freely and unrestrictedly. That is to say, she tells me, that your feeling means so little to me I couldn't care less what you're telling me or what your feelings are toward me. As for her own affairs, she had already discussed them with me before, though never with full sincerity. What is more, her disdainful treatment of my person included, for instance, the following subtleties. She would know, let's say, that I was familiar with a certain circumstance in her life, or knew of some matter which was greatly worrying her. In fact, she would tell me herself something about her circumstances, whenever it was opportune to use me for her ends, like a slave, or to run errands for her. But she would tell me exactly as much as a man employed on her errands need know. And seeing herself how worried and anxious I was about her worries and anxieties, what with the whole chain of events being obscure to me, she would not deign to reassure me of her full confidence as a friend. Though, inasmuch as she would use me often for errands which were not only troublesome but outright dangerous, more candor on her part ought to, in my opinion, have been in order. Indeed, why bother about my feelings? What of it if I was, perhaps, worried too, and feeling 3 times as troubled and anxious about her troubles and failures as she was herself? I had known about her intention to play roulette as early as 3 weeks before. She had given me advance notice that I would have to play in her stead, since it would be improper for her to do any gambling herself. From the tone of her words I gathered, even then, that she had a serious problem rather than a simple desire to win some money. What could money as such mean to her? There must be some purpose, there must be certain circumstances, at which I can only guess, but of which I know nothing so far. Of course, the humiliation and slavery in which she keeps me could give me a chance, and often does, to ask rude and direct questions of her. Since I am only her slave and utterly insignificant in her eyes, there is no reason for her to take offense at my crude curiosity. But the fact of the matter is that while she allows me to ask questions, she doesn't answer them. Sometimes she doesn't even notice them. That's what it is like between us. Yesterday there was a lot of talk about the telegram which had been sent to Petersburg 4 days earlier, and to which no reply had been received. The general is obviously upset and is doing a lot of thinking. It is, of course, connected with grandmother. The Frenchman is upset too. Yesterday, for example, they had a long and serious conversation after dinner. The Frenchman's attitude toward all of us is exceedingly haughty and condescending. To this, the saying applies: sit a pig at the table and he will soon put his feet on it. Even with Polina, he is casual to the point of being rude. However, he most happily takes part in our family outings, on foot in the casino park, or on horseback and by carriage in the nearby countryside. I have been familiar for some time with some of the circumstances which tie the Frenchman to the general. In Russia they made plans together to start a factory. I don't know whether this project has fallen through, or whether they are still discussing it. Besides, I am in on a part of their family secret. The Frenchman really did bail out the general last year, giving him 30,000 to make up a shortage in a government account on the occasion of the general's resignation from his post. It goes without saying that he has got the general in his clutches, yet at the present moment it is still Mademoiselle Blanche who plays the main role in this whole business, and I'm quite sure that I'm not mistaken about that. Who is this Mademoiselle Blanche? In our circle it is assumed that she is of the French nobility, that she is traveling with her mother, and that she has a huge fortune. It is also known that she is somehow related to our Marquis, though very distantly, being his second cousin or something of the sort. I gather that before my trip to Paris, the Frenchman and Mademoiselle Blanche were on much more formal terms with each other, on a more refined and delicate footing, one might have said. But now their social relations, their mutual attitudes as friends and relatives have acquired rather coarse and intimate character. It may well be that our affairs look so extremely wretched to them that they don't even think it's very important to stand on ceremony or to keep up appearances before us. The day before yesterday I noticed how Mr. Astley was looking at Mademoiselle Blanche and her mother. I had the impression that he knew them. It seemed to me that even our Frenchman has met Mr. Astley before. Mr. Astley is so shy, bashful and taciturn, however, that one can be almost sure of him. He won't wash anybody's dirty linen in public. At any rate, the Frenchman barely says hello to him and pays almost no attention to him, which means that he's not afraid of him. One can understand that, but why does Mademoiselle Blanche pay almost no attention to him either? Especially considering the fact that the Marquis let out the secret yesterday. He suddenly said in the course of a general conversation, I forgot in what connection, that Mr. Astley is colossally rich, which he, the Marquis, knew for a fact. So, Mademoiselle Blanche ought to have ample reason to pay some attention to Mr. Astley. All things considered, the General looks very worried. One can understand what a telegram announcing his own death could mean to him. Though I felt fairly certain that Paulina was avoiding a conversation with me, and apparently for a purpose, I assumed a cool and indifferent air myself. I kept thinking that sooner or later she'd have to come to me. Instead, yesterday and today, I've been concentrating my attention mostly at Mademoiselle Blanche. Poor General, he is most definitely done for. To fall in love at 50, with such violence of passion, is of course a calamity. Add to this his widowhood, his children, a completely ruined estate, debts, and on top of it the kind of woman he has had the misfortune to fall in love with. Mademoiselle Blanche is a beautiful woman. Yet I don't know whether I'll be properly understood if I say that she has one of those faces which one might feel frightened of. At least I have always feared such women. She must be about 25. She is tall, with broad, strong shoulders. Her neck and bosom are magnificent. Her complexion is a swarthy yellow. Her hair raven black, and she's got a great deal of it, enough for 2 coiffures. Her eyes are black with yellowish whites. Her look insolent, her teeth very white, and her lips always painted. Her perfume smells of musk. She dresses spectacularly, expensively, and with a chic, yet with much taste. Her hands and feet are a marvel. Her voice is a husky contralto. Sometimes she will laugh aloud, showing her teeth, but as a rule she wears an uncommunicative and insolent expression on her face, at least in the presence of Paulina and Maria Philippovna. There is a strange rumor. Maria Philippovna is returning to Russia. I think that Mademoiselle Blanche is wholly uneducated, perhaps not even clever, but she is cunning and always on her guard. I would imagine that her life has not been totally uneventful, and, to tell the whole truth, it may well be that the Marquise is not her relative at all, and that her mother is not her mother. But there is evidence that in Berlin, where we first met them, she and her mother had some reputable acquaintances. As for the Marquis himself, though I still doubt that he is a Marquis, it seems to be an indubitable fact that he is received in decent society, as for instance in Moscow and in some places in Germany. I wonder, though, about France. They say he owns a chateau. I had thought that much water would flow under the bridge in those 2 weeks, yet I still don't know for sure whether anything definitive had been said between Mademoiselle Blanche and the General. By and large, everything now depends on our fortune, that is, whether or not the General will be able to show them a lot of money. If, for instance, news were to come the grandmother had not died, I am positive that Mademoiselle Blanche would disappear immediately. I find it amazing and quite funny myself what a gossip I've become, haven't I? How repulsive it is, all of it. With what relish would I get rid of all of them and all of it? But how could I leave Paulina? How could I quit my spying on her? Spying is base, of course, but what do I care? I was quite intrigued by Mr. Astley, also, yesterday and today. Yes, I am convinced that he is in love with Paulina. It is curious and funny to see how much the glance of a bashful and painfully chaste man, very much in love, may sometimes express, particularly when that man would certainly much rather be swallowed by the earth than betray or express anything at all by word or glance. We often meet Mr. Astley on our walks. He takes off his hat and walks on, though he is dying, of course, to join us. and whenever invited to do so, he immediately refuses. Wherever we go to take the air around the casino, at the bench shell or by the fountain, he'll be seen standing, quite without fail, not far from our bench. And no matter where we might be, in the park, in the forest, or on the Schlagenberg, all one has to do is raise one's eyes and scan the landscape. And there, sure enough, on the nearest footpath or behind a bush, a piece of Mr. Astley will pop up. I'm under the impression that he's looking for an opportunity to talk to me personally. This morning we met and exchanged a few words. On occasion he will speak somehow very abruptly. Having barely said good morning, he said straight away, "Oh, Mademoiselle Blanche, I've seen many women like Mademoiselle Blanche." He paused, giving me a significant look. I don't know what he wanted to say by that, because when I asked him what do you mean by this, he only nodded his head with a sly smile and added, "That is the way it is. Is Mademoiselle Pauline very fond of flowers?" "I don't know. I don't know at all," I answered. "What? You don't know that either?" he cried, greatly astonished. "I don't know. I just never noticed," I repeated, laughing. That gives me something very special to think about." Here he nodded his head and walked on. He looked very pleased, though. He and I conversed in the most dreadful French.